Does the idea of having a therapist that's available 24/7 feel good to you? Is it enticing? What about some place where you feel like you could really share the most vulnerable things about yourself without judgment? That would feel pretty good, right? Well, there are a lot of people who are really feeling like they have found that. And today I want to talk about some of the things that might be important to consider when doing so. Welcome. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you for joining me. So if you're at all in the tech world, you might have a little bit of an idea of what I'm talking about. And I think this is kind of an important thing to talk about for probably a few different reasons. It's not something I'm an expert in, so I do want to be clear about that. But I am talking about the use of AI as a therapist, as a coach, basically any role that they might fulfill in helping you heal from trauma or work through a really difficult issue. So I'd love to hear from you. First of all, are you using AI as kind of an adjunct maybe, or maybe a sole therapist to help you with different things? So I have a couple of different perspectives on this, or viewpoints, I guess, and where that comes from. I am somebody that uses AI for some different things. My husband is very into AI. He's in the tech world anyway, but he is very into AI. And he was working on a particular project that we had lots of conversations around in regards to some of the concerns that I had as a therapist, as a person who has worked with people that have had lots of different kinds of struggles. And also somebody who knows the importance of connection when it comes to healing. So, if you're not familiar, just kind of briefly, there are a lot of different AI models out there, but most people that I hear talking about it are talking about ChatGPT. And they are finding that they can share all different kinds of things, whether it's really specific things about trauma or just I'm kind of struggling with this and give me some ideas about how to get through that, or I need some good affirmations for this issue, or whatever. There's a variety of ways to use it. And I want to be clear that I'm not anti-AI at all, actually. But what I'm hearing as people talk about it is that they are using it sometimes for therapy. And one of the things that I've heard many times actually at this point is that they don't feel judged. And I get that. And that's important, to not feel judged. But there's part of the mechanism that's built into AI that is specifically geared toward lifting you up, which is good. We all want that, right? But there are times in this healing journey, in any therapeutic process, in which we need to hear things sometimes that we may not want to hear. We need to be pushed beyond our comfort zone at times, of course, in an appropriate and healthy way. But that's very nuanced. And an AI model isn't going to be able to carry that nuance. So that is an important consideration. In fact, one of the concerns that I have had from the beginning when my husband was first talking about this, and I'm hearing some people talk about it, is that it can give you this false sense of potentially being on the right track or making really good and healthy decisions when you really may not be. Now, that's not to say that I think it should be critical of you or that you're an idiot and you don't know what you're doing. It's not at all that. But when we are hearing things that are confirming what we are wanting to hear, it doesn't push us in the ways that we sometimes need to be pushed. Aside from that, there's really, I think, several concerns, and I'm probably not even going to remember to talk about all of them. But one of the things with that is that when you are having a conversation, and this could be true even if you're using it for business purposes, and you're having this conversation with your AI, and you're asking it questions to help you with your business, and every time that you tell it what you want to do or something like that, and it's reporting back to you and saying, it's a brilliant idea, and this is wonderful, what an incredible way to really step into all you're meant to be, or whatever it's saying, and it bases what it says in part from the things that you're sharing with it. But when we hear that kind of thing, whether it's about business or therapy or just something that's continuously lifting you up, which again is not a bad thing, it can be hard then to have real conversations with actual people, because people are human, and as humans we all have our own moments. Every moment we are experiencing our own stuff, right? We might be in a place that feels really good. We might be in a place that feels like it's more of a struggle. There are a variety of things that go into what can kind of influence that. Body language plays a big role here as well, yours and the other person's. There are a lot of things that go into real life interaction. And if you are interacting with somebody, and let's say that you are sharing that you're having a really hard day and you're venting about something that happened, which we all need the ability to vent every once in a while. But you're just venting about, maybe something that happened at work or something that happened with your partner, and you're just really kind of letting it out, which there's nothing really wrong with that at all. There can be benefit in that in a variety of ways. Your AI is likely going to come back and tell you the things that are going to make you feel better. That may be in part true, but some of it may not be. And the challenge is that, particularly if you're in a place where there's a lot of energy, it's really difficult, if not potentially impossible, to discern from what they're saying what is real and valid, and what is the AI, what is it just that this AI is saying to make me feel better, or to placate me, or whatever it might be. And the more heightened that energy is, the more challenging it is to be able to discern that. And so when we're interacting with people, and the person that you're interacting or venting to doesn't respond in the way that you've kind of gotten a little accustomed to and appreciate because it makes you feel better, when you have that interaction with this live person in front of you or on the phone or whatever, and they don't respond in the same way or a similar way that leaves you feeling in a similar type of state, it can cause you to want to move away from this real life interaction. And this is one of the biggest concerns that I had quite a while ago when my husband was first talking with me about this. He wasn't creating a therapy like bot or anything like that specifically, but I said, I think there can be a place for it, particularly if it's trained very specifically. I think there can be a place for it as kind of an adjunct sort of thing. And there's a lot of different things that might be important in terms of being able to train it. But even if it is trained very well, there are going to be a lot of things that it misses. And when when people get accustomed to interacting with, for all intents and purposes, a robot, something that isn't real, that doesn't feel, that is speaking from a knowledge base and has no feeling base, no ability to observe nonverbal cues or tones or that sort of thing, we end up as individuals doing that, engaging in that, we end up losing our ability to be able to connect in the real world. And this has been an ongoing thing just about social media generally. Like years ago, when Facebook was really the only social media, there were even conversations way back then. At that point, it's weird to say way back then, but there were conversations about how these are not real relationships. And of course, that's even, grown exponentially in the various forms of social media that are out there. But the impact that it has on our interpersonal ability to engage, to connect, to feel, to develop real relationships. And that, I think, and I don't know what the answer is, but that is incredibly concerning to me, and not just to me, it is to other people as well, but it is something to be aware of. So a couple of things that I really wanted to talk about. If you are finding that it's really more about being kind of conscious of how you're using it, being mindful of how much you're using it versus how much you're engaging with people in your real life, that is huge. That is probably one of the most significant things that I would really encourage and, in a sense, almost implore you to do. I think there can be a lot of really pretty amazing benefit with it. But like most things in life, we need to be mindful of how we are using it. And the reality is, for people that have experienced childhood trauma and people that are just kind of struggling emotionally generally, a natural inclination often, and we've talked about this before, is to pull back, right? And I have said that, particularly if we're really struggling, the desire, that self-protective part of ourselves, is going to want us to pull back from people, from the risk of feeling vulnerable, the risk of being rejected, the risk of being judged. Our self-protective mechanism is going to want us to pull back. And I have talked about how important it is, when that happens, to be really intentional at those times in particular, to reach out, to stay connected, even just to one person. That is so incredibly important, not just for healing overall, but for our well-being. Not just emotional well-being, but for our physical well-being. We have to be able to engage and communicate and connect with other people in real life. And when I say real life, it doesn't necessarily have to always be in person at all, but it's a real conversation, real engagement, where we can hopefully even see each other every once in a while. Because there is so much that happens that is nonverbal. So try to be really mindful of it. If you are using it to help you along any sort of emotional healing, particularly if you've really not done any therapy before, please just be really cautious of how you are using it. Because as good as it may seem, and there are a lot of good things that it can give you, it cannot take the place of a real human interaction cannot take the place of real human connection. It cannot understand the nuance that is so important in being able to help somebody through a difficult experience, particularly something that has been so deeply ingrained, like childhood trauma. So try to just be really mindful of that, and please, if at all possible, do not use that as your source, your sole source of therapy. Where I think it can be helpful is if you were to share, like if you're in therapy and you were to share a little bit of like what stood out to you in your session, like what felt really helpful, what is something that you want to remember. Now, in ChatGPT, you'd have to have the memory turned on, which is another concern that I will talk about in a moment. But like sharing things that are coming from real human interaction that you're learning about, that you're experiencing, and then being able, like if it's the middle of the night and you feel like you just need a reminder of, that you're capable of getting through this, that you have done so much good work already. It can be a great source for that because you've kind of fed it real life examples. You have given it your perception, your views on different kinds of things. And so it can help remind you of some of those things. And in that way, it can be really beneficial in terms of like wanting to know that you're not alone with a particular struggle. Generally speaking, it can be really helpful in that way as well. Certainly something where you're looking at where it actually goes to the internet and searches documentation performed or created by a human. Like you can get different kinds of statistics and that sort of thing. But the reality is that AI lies. Not all the time. I wouldn't even say most of the time. But I know that it's not 100% accurate because I have played around with it. I have tested it because I don't trust it. Like when it first came out and my husband was really totally into it when it was in the very first days. And I was like, I don't know about this. I was very hesitant. I thought it had good potential, but I also thought it had a lot of risk. And so I've really done lots of different kinds of things with it, things that I've actually had it help me with, things that I've just kind of explored and tested it with, all different kinds of things. And I've played around with a few different large models. But it isn't able to give you just purely straight truth and facts. And especially in a time when there's so much misleading information out there, misinformation out there, and just plain people that don't know what they're talking about and maybe even deliberately lying about things for whatever reason they might have, because it continues to learn, right? But whether it's that it doesn't know the answer, whether it's confused, whatever it might be, it does not always provide factual information. And that can be problematic in a variety of ways. And it can be incredibly seriously problematic. Sometimes it's just annoying. Sometimes it can be dangerous in terms of the wrong information that it might give you. So try to be just really mindful. Don't take anything purely at face value as fact. Just like when you're hearing somebody who has no professional qualification talk about something about how you can heal, do a little bit of research. I talked about this recently to just find out for sure for yourself. So do that. It can give you some really great information. It can help you kind of decide different, like what you might benefit most from in terms of what type of therapist to look for. Like there's different things that it really can potentially help with. But the last thing that I want to talk about, that I just would encourage you to be really conscious and mindful of, aside from the fact that it isn't necessarily always going to give you factual information, is that, and I don't know all the ins and outs of this, but you have to be very mindful of what you are actually choosing to share with your AI, because it's most likely not as private as we think that it may be. And even if it is private in this moment, doesn't mean that it will be tomorrow. So just be cautious of that. And part of the reason I'm saying that is because of all the people that I've heard talk about how they can share things that they would never share with another human being. And to me, that suggests that either you have a lot of shame around it, or it's something that you might get in trouble for. And if somebody else had access to that information, that would not be good for you. In whether it's emotionally wouldn't be good for you, or potentially legally wouldn't be good for you. So just try to be really mindful of what you do choose to share if you are somebody who has been using this. And if you haven't been using it, my guess is there will likely come a day when you find yourself more inclined to do so. And unless we're talking about way off in the future, a future that I can't even really imagine, all the concerns that I shared today will still be relevant for quite some time. There may even be some new things that aren't necessarily concerns right now that will be down the road. So just be really mindful. If it gives you information that something feels kind of off about it, then just go do an actual internet search, not an AI search. If you find that it's not challenging you at all, or reminding you maybe of something that you've said before, and it's always just kind of really being a great cheerleader, just be mindful of that and recognize, okay, wait a second here. I need to be maybe a little bit more discerning of what I'm taking in from what it is sharing with me. I know mine is telling me how amazing my work is, and not saying it's not. I'd like to think that my work is good and beneficial, but sometimes it's really a little overboard, and that's part of what makes me see that it's not, because it doesn't know me. Like, I can share with it my website, I can share things that I've written, I can share all this stuff, but it doesn't know me. It doesn't know, it doesn't have the ability, like I can share what my motivation is for something, like this is why I want to do this, help me do this, and this is why I want to do it. It can take that information in, but it isn't necessarily going to be able to ask me deeper questions that help me understand maybe why I have that motivation, which can be important when it's helping me guide me into like what I really want to focus on. If I just take it at face value, then it's easy to feel like, well, everything I'm doing is exactly what I need to be doing, when I know that it isn't necessarily. So just try to stay mindful of those things. I would really love to hear from you. Have you used it in any aspect related to any sort of emotional support in any capacity? And if so, how has it worked for you? I want to go back to that memory thing for a second that I mentioned. And I did end up talking about it just in terms of being careful what you share. But I don't, I think ChatGPT at this point might be the only one that has the ability to like turn memory on, which can be really helpful in a lot of different like sorts of capacities in terms of what it can do. But if you have memory turned on, then it is kind of, in a sense, remembering all of your conversations. So all of the things that you're putting in, all the information, all the thoughts, all the feelings, all the fears, all the stuff that you're putting in, it retains that to some degree, which means, again, in terms of privacy, that could potentially be attainable to other sources, entities, people, governments down the road. So I don't want to scare you, but it is something that I think is important. And I've not really heard, I hear lots of people talking about how great it is in this kind of realm, but I actually haven't heard anybody talk about it in this realm in that way in terms of the concerns. So let me know in the comments if it's something you've used, if it's something that you think that you might use. Like I said, I'm not anti-AI. I think it can be really beneficial in several different ways. Just don't let it be your primary source of connection, because it isn't connection at all. Don't let it be your primary source of information, because it will sometimes lie to you. And it will be your biggest cheerleader, meaning that it's never going to ask you important questions to help you go deeper. Just be mindful of those things, because we need real human interaction. We need to be in the physical space of other people. Even if we're just sitting at a coffee shop, there is benefit in that. Part of that might depend on where your head is and how you're feeling that particular day. Some days it's going to be more beneficial than others, depending on where you are. But AI will never be able to take the place of real, live, human interaction. As much as we may want it to be, it cannot be. So don't let it replace how you show up with people in your life. Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you soon.